Good afternoon, students. And so this week, I'm going to talk about persuasive essay. The persuasive essay, or the argumentative essay, is one of the most common essays that college students will have to write in their college career. Now, persuasive writing exists in many venues, and it exists everywhere. For example, if we look at a billboard while we're driving down the street, and the billboard says, I remember seeing a billboard in which the billboard said, "Marry me," or something like that. There was this big, there was a guy, and he was a cowboy or something like that. And I guess he was having trouble finding a wife. And so he had to create a billboard that had a picture of him and asking any woman to marry him. And it worked, actually. And so when we have persuasive writing, it exists when we watch television, when the advertiser tries to persuade us to buy their product, or when we go on websites and the websites persuade us to buy their products. But when we write a persuasive essay for our academic classes, we want to maintain third-person case. So when I was correcting most of your essays for persuasive essays, or the most common mistake was after essay structure was the use of you and your. So when we write our persuasive essays, we want to avoid using you and your. We want to replace all you and your with a person and a persons. And we also, if we're going to talk about ourselves, we need to write about ourselves. Yes, we write about ourselves in third person case. So if I want to say, instead of saying I am giving this lecture about persuasive essays, I would say Professor H is giving her lecture about persuasive essays. You will find that if you stick to third person case, when you write persuasive essays or any academic paper, for that matter, any research paper, you will have a more professional, formal, and less conversational tone. And when you have a more professional tone, you have your paper becomes more credible. Another mistake I see is that people use I, me, I believe, we, our, first person case. So once again, delete all instances of I believe, or I think, in my opinion, or us, our, or we. And instead, write about yourself, in the third person case. And write out your contractions. So instead of saying I am, instead of saying I'm, you would write, instead of saying he's, you would write he is, she is, it is, instead of it's. Because when you write out your contractions, you sound more professional and less conversational. So those are some of the few mistakes that I saw in your essays. Also make sure that your thesis statement is the last sentence of the first paragraph and the first sentence of the last paragraph. Make sure that your topic sentences align with your thesis statement. Make sure that your thesis statement is an effective thesis statement in which you have a what and a why. And so that, for example, so the what of the thesis statement, which is the main idea of your essay, is to have topic plus opinion. That's the what. In other words, what are you talking about in your essay? And then why. Because in the why, reason 1, reason 2, reason 3, that's going to be the reason why you wrote your essay, the meat of your essay. So that's why the why section goes into the middle part of your essay and becomes your body paragraphs. The why section is the reason why everyone is reading the essay, why you are writing the essay, and it proves your claim to be true. And it's also in the body paragraphs that you're going to use credible sources in order to prove what you said. So if you're going to have numerical data, if you're going to have numbers, historical data, medical data, unknown, any kind of unknown knowledge, then you have to use APA and an APA in-text citation. If you cite the source word per word, then you need quotation marks. You need to have the author and the date and the page number. And then if you have a paraphrase quote, that's when you quote cite the source in your own words, summarize the source in your own words, then you don't need quotation marks. And all you need is just the author and the date. So whether or not you use direct or paraphrase quote, whenever you use numbers, you want to give credit to the researcher who did the research. And so that is why we use APA. And then at the end of your paper, you are going to have a references list. And you want to make sure that your references list matches your in-text citations. So for example, if you said 80% of Americans are obese, then you write Smith 2022, page 22. That would be your in-text citation, just inside the body of your paper. Then when you write your references citation, then you have to have the author's name, such as Smith, Patrick, then you write 2022, then you write the name of the article, like the dangers of obesity, and you italicize it. Then you write the website name, such as the Centers for Disease Control, for instance. Then you write retrieved, today's date, from www.cdc.org. So that's how you write your reference citations. And you make sure that your reference citations are in alphabetical order and that you use left hanging indent. And you use left hanging indent only for your reference citations. Also, make sure that you double space your paper, you use Times New Roman font 12, and that you indent the first line, 5 spaces, the first line of every paragraph. And also use transition words like first, second, third, in between paragraphs in order to have better essay flow. That's another common mistake. So I hope that this short talk will help you with your persuasive essay. So to sum up, a persuasive essay is when you want to convince the reader of your point of view. When you write a persuasive essay, you want to state your position, you take a side, and then you justify your side with your body paragraphs. And that there are 3 kinds of persuasive essays. You have the persuasive essay known as the position paper, where you take a position on an issue and justify it. Then you have a call to action persuasive paper, where the purpose of your persuasive paper is that you convince the reader to take action for a social injustice. And that you get the reader to care about your topic so much that the reader will go out and write to the senator or join a protest. And then that's a call to action persuasive paper. Then a problem, then the last kind of persuasive paper is a problem solution paper, where you state a problem and you present a solution. And a problem solution persuasive paper is used in research proposals, business proposals. So let's say you, and I'm going to go over this when I teach, when I did my business writing lecture a few weeks back. So for instance, let's say that I'm a contractor and I am looking for a job. So I noticed that this business has a really small parking lot, and then the people complain about it. And so I go up to that business and I propose that my company will build that business a bigger parking lot. So I want to convince that employer to hire me to build for them a bigger parking lot. Okay, so that's like a proposal. I state the problem: too small a parking lot. Customers are complaining. And then solution: I will build a bigger parking lot for you, then you will no longer have anybody complaining about it. And so that would be a problem solution proposal. And so when we do a problem solution paper, persuasive essay, that's used in business proposals, research proposals, and science paper proposals. So for example, and also a problem solution paper is very similar to a call to action, where you're trying to get somebody to do something. And so a call to action persuasive paper and a problem solution paper overlap. okay, together. But in your kind, and the most famous call to action persuasive paper I will cover in today's lecture is Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream. His call to action persuasive speech is to help end racism and make people aware of the harmful effects of racism. So I'm going to, after such a long monologue, I am going to finally start today's lecture about what is a persuasive essay. And then in my PowerPoint, I will also point out ways in which you can write a better persuasive essay and what makes a valid argument. So here is today's, we're going to go like this from the beginning. Yes, let there be light. So what is a persuasive essay? So persuasive essay, you can, some teachers, when they teach persuasive essay, they teach persuasive essay as a way for the students to develop a voice in which they can then write about social injustice. So that some writing teachers actually direct their writing class that way, as a vehicle for students to learn how to write and develop a voice for social justice. Other writing teachers have a writing class and use persuasive essay to teach students writing skills. So there are two ways to actually teach this particular topic. So if you're a writing teacher, you're interested in that sort of thing. So, but since you're a student, we're interested in what exactly is a persuasive essay. A persuasive essay means that you want to find a way to get what you want. You want to convince the reader you are right. So persuasive writing or persuasive speech occurs everywhere you look, from billboards selling you the latest drink or movie, to TV ads selling you the latest medicines to cure anything from headaches to acne, to business letters you write at work to keep customers to coming back to the business, or if you want to get a promotion and ask your boss for a raise, or you're a teenager begging you to have a later curfew. So we all want to get our way, whoever we are, wherever we are. So persuasive writing can also be used to address social justice issues, to encourage people to take action against the injustices in society by persuading people to care so much about injustice or your cause that they will take action or even pass a law to solve a societal problem. Therefore, being able to argue or persuade is an important skill to have. What is persuasive writing? Why is it important to know how to write persuasively? What kind of persuasive writing have you used on your job, in marketing, in sales? What kind of persuasive writing do you see on TV, in the newspaper? What about those Super Bowl ads? Why are those Super Bowl ads so fun to watch? How are they persuasive? Food for thought. In a persuasive essay, you want to convince the reader your point of view. So in this paper, or not in this paper, in this presentation, I'm going to cover steps in building a good argumentative essay, engaging the other side, ethos, pathos, logos, position paper, the three kinds of persuasive essays, such as a position paper, call to action, and a problem solution paper. There are different kinds of claims in good argumentation. So how to build persuasive arguments? You need to identify your audience and purpose, generate ideas and gather solid evidence, develop a line of reasoning, draw reasonable conclusions from your research, support each claim with solid evidence to avoid fallacies, that is, illogical arguments, make concessions, and develop rebuttals. Develop a line of reasoning. This means that your essay should be about one central idea, an argument is a chain of reasons used to support a claim. This means being able to create a clear thesis statement, topic, opinion, reasons, a what and a why, and being able to draw conclusions from your research. Making and qualifying claims. An argument centers on a claim, a debatable topic or a debatable statement that the reader can agree or disagree upon. This debatable claim becomes your thesis statement or key point you wish to write about. A strong claim has the following traits. It is clearly arguable. It's defendable. It's responsible. It's understandable. And it's interesting. And it's by making the claim debatable, that's what makes it interesting. So if, for example, I say, everybody needs 8 hours of sleep, or water is necessary for life. These claims are not debatable, therefore not interesting. So by making the claim debatable or something that people can agree or disagree upon, that's what makes the persuasive essay interesting, because then the person would want to read your essay to find out why your point of view is the valid one. Distinguish claims from facts and opinions. A claim or thesis is a conclusion drawn from logical thought and reliable evidence. A fact is a statement that can be checked for accuracy. An opinion is a personally held taste or attitude. Fact: The Lord of the Rings was written by Tolkien. Opinion: The Lord of the Rings was my favorite movie series of all times. And so then when we write our thesis statement, we don't want to simply write The Lord of the Rings was written by Tolkien, because there's nothing there to prove. So when if we add our opinion to the fact, then that makes it interesting, because then you have to prove that opinion. And it's in proving that opinion that makes it interesting for people to read your paper. So when you make a claim, you could say, the character, plot, and dialogue of Lord of the Rings makes it a great movie. Here you have the what and the why. The what is Lord of the Rings is a great movie. The why is the character, the plot, and the dialogue are great. So that's how you have an excellent thesis statement. There are 3 kinds of claims. You can have a claim of truth. That is, a claim of truth states that something is or is not the case. As a writer, you want the reader to accept your claim as trustworthy. Climate change is or is not a hoax. Climate change is a hoax because, all right? So it's either it is or it isn't. Claim of value states that something does or does not have worth. Is it worth it to get a college education? It is not worth getting a college education because. So that is a claim of value, the value of education. Claim of policy. Claim of policy states that something ought or not ought to be done. Should we or should we not have gun control? And so when we write these days, claim of policy and claim of value, claim of truth can all be intermixed together, you know. So that a claim of policy such as we should institute, not we, people should institute climate change reform. So here you have a mixture of a claim of value and a claim of policy. A claim of truth is a fact that tells the truth about the topic. A claim of truth states that something is or is not the case. So examples of claim of truth, which is facts, that's not arguable. The Arctic ice cap will begin to disappear by 2050. In 12 years, if we cannot control climate, we will destroy our environment. The cholesterol in eggs is not as dangerous as previously stated. Women are just as smart and capable as men. Avoid statements that are obviously true or impossible to support or research. Examples of claim of value. A claim of value puts values and standards to a claim. A claim of value states that something does or does not have worth. Volunteer tutoring provides a valuable service to at-risk youth. Many music videos fail to present positive images of women. Asian Americans are underrepresented in TV and movies. So claims of value must be supported by a reference to a known standard, not your feelings. So essay topic, can money buy happiness? Examples of claim of policy. Claims of policy state that something ought or ought not to be done. You don't have to agree with all of these stances. Remember to agree to disagree. Some policy claims are political. Special taxes should be placed on gas-guzzling SUVs. Marijuana should be legalized in all 50 states. The George Floyd bill needs to be passed for police reform. So remember, if you don't agree with that, agree to disagree. Roe versus Wade should be made the law of the land in the Supreme Court. Okay, but in this case, since I'm updating what I just wrote here, Roe versus Wade, some people feel Roe versus Wade should be codified by Congress, made into law. Claims of policy focus on action. An argument over policy may involve claims of truth and claims of value. Avoid all or nothing extreme claims. So if you say something like, all Chinese people are good at math, all or nothing claims results in fallacies and stereotypes. Make a truly meaningful claim. Use qualifiers or reasons to justify or temper your claim. So if I say that all Chinese people are good at math, that's not true. I remember when I was walking across the campus of my college, and a very desperate student came up to me and said, oh, you've got to help me with my math. I'm failing in my math class. I'll pay you big money. Can you tutor me? I remember I looked at the student and I said, oh, I'm terrible at math. I'm an English major. And the student looked shocked and said, but you're Chinese. I thought all Chinese people were supposed to be good at math. And then I told her that, did you know that when you take the SAT, you get 250 points just for signing your name correctly? Do you know how I know that? I told the student, and I told that to the student. And I said to her, do you know how I know that? That's because I got all of the math questions wrong. And the only thing I did right was I signed my name correctly and legibly. Therefore, I earned 250 points out of 800. You should have seen the shocked look on her face. She said, no way, but you're Chinese. You're supposed to be good at math. And I said, not this Chinese person. She's good at, I remember I aced the English section. The first time I took the SAT, I totally aced it. It was so easy. But the math section, I had to take several times before I finally got a passing score. So not all Chinese people are good at math. That's why I'm your English teacher, not your math teacher. Avoid unclear, fuzzy language. Avoid ambiguity. Make sure that your information relates back to your thesis. Avoid using slanted language, that is, choosing words with strong or negative connotations, which will draw the reader away from the logic of your argument. Avoid using slang, cliches, texting language, and always maintain a professional academic tone. And please use third-person case, that is he, she, and they. Make valid claims to avoid fallacies. So in order to make a valid claim, you have to have ethos, pathos, and logos. Now, ethos, pathos, and logos were the three appeals that were that makes up what a good, valid argument is. Some of you have heard of it. It's from Aristotle. Okay, Aristotle came up with ethos means that you have an argument that's written by experts. Pathos means that you can appeal to the reader's emotions with descriptive language. Logos is the appeal to logic, which means that you have a good, valid thesis statement with matching body paragraphs. And so ethos is the appeal to credibility, written by experts. Pathos, appeal to emotions. You get to hook the reader. to the paper with this good descriptive language that gives the reader a mental picture of the event, appeal to emotion. Logos, appeal to logic. Once again, good essay structure with no grammar mistakes. If any of these appeals are missing, then you end up with an illogical argument and you end up with a fallacy. So whenever you read a newspaper article or listen to something on television or the radio, you need to ask yourself, does that argument have ethos, pathos, and logos all together? Now, if that argument that you hear on television is missing any of these three components, then you know not to believe that argument. Most TV commercials are fallacies because that is an illogical argument because they lack ethos. In other words, if I said Dentine is a great chewing gum because most dentists recommend it for killing cavities, then I would be like, which dentists? Who are the dentists? Which research studies? What are the dates of those research studies? And so if someone just says something vague like experts say, research shows, what research? Who did the research? So that particular statement is not valid because it lacks ethos. It lacks an APA in-text citation. This is why we don't count on Wikipedia for our papers, because Wikipedia is missing a lot of their in-text citations. So if your paper is missing APA in-text citations, then your paper turns into a fallacy. A fallacy means that somebody reads it and doesn't believe it because it's illogical and it's like a fairy tale. It's like if we don't justify what we write by putting in references, then people will think you just made it up off the top of your head. So I could say something like, all humans originated from Mars or something like that, or I was abducted by aliens. You know, anybody can just make up anything. That's what makes Wikipedia not a reliable source, because anybody can just upload anything. So make sure that whatever you write or whatever you read has ethos, pathos, and logos, so that when you listen to the radio, you know what is fact and what is opinion. Opinion tends to be something that's just only pathos only. It lacks logos and it even lacks ethos. And so when you have someone who's overly emotional, someone who uses fear in order to get you to do something, okay, that's an example of fear-mongering, is an example of just using only pathos to convince the reader to do something. That is a fallacy. So because you're missing ethos and you're missing logos. So we want to avoid fallacies in our argumentative essays by making sure that our papers are written by experts, that our resources, that our credible evidence is follows kapow, that is, it's current, it has an authoritative source, P, the purpose, it's not an ad, O, it's objective, and W, the writing purpose, is professional. And the whole thing is called kapow. And so as long as we have credible evidence, and as long as we have ethos, pathos, and logos in our paper, then we have a valid argument, and our paper is not a fallacy. So whatever you want to do, you want to avoid fallacies. So what are the three kinds of claims that are debatable or factual? What is the difference between a fact and an opinion? So an opinion is when you just write about something off the top of your head with no APA. In other words, it's just what you think, but you didn't bother to back it up by having research. Why are debatable claims important in persuasive essays? Because if we just simply write, people need to drink water to stay alive, that's not a debatable claim. That's boring. So we want to have something more debatable so that people can agree or disagree upon, and then you write your essay to justify your thesis. Why is it important to have a good thesis statement for your paper? Because your thesis statement acts as a roadmap to what your paper is going to be about. What are the three kinds of claims? You have the claim of truth, which is just a fact. Claim of value, which means is something worth it or not worth it. And a claim of policy, where you tell people such and such a policy needs to be instituted in order for something to work, like gun control, which is a hot topic these days. Ever since the Buffalo shooting, everybody's talking about gun control or abortion. Those are the two most popular topics right now. I remember during the election, it had to do with who's going to be the better president, Trump or Biden. And going back to when the Parkland shooting occurred, it was, should teachers have guns in the classroom? So a lot of the persuasive essay topics for papers that I get from students is influenced by what's on TV. So why do we avoid all or nothing extreme claims? So we avoid saying all. Instead we use some. So if you were to say all Chinese people are good at math, that makes it a fallacy. Instead, you should say some Chinese people, a few Chinese people are good at math. Then that's a valid claim because it's something you can prove. So anything that you can prove, you have to, when you write a thesis statement, you have to write a thesis statement that you can research and you can prove. How to gather credible evidence. So we need to gather credible evidence for our papers so that readers know that we're not just making it up off the top of our heads, and to avoid fallacies. So in order to gather credible evidence, you use peer-reviewed articles from the online library at your school. You avoid using Wikipedia for your paper. You gather statistics. And then other forms of credible evidence are tests and experiments, graphics, analogies, expert testimony, analyses, and predictions. Use evidence. Go for quality and variety, not for quantity. Use pie structure so that you have one in-text citation per paragraph. So when you use pie structure, you have P, main point from your thesis statement. That is your topic sentence. I, that one in-text citation, and E, an explanation of that one in-text citation in 5 sentences. So you don't want to overwhelm your reader with 50,000 in-text citations. So basically you use one in-text citation per paragraph. Make sure your evidence is accurate, complete, concrete, relevant. Relevant meaning that it's related to the thesis. Current means it's up to date within the last 10 years. Authoritative means that it's based on experts. Appealing, that it's interesting to readers. Do not drown your reader with too many quotes or numbers because you will overwhelm the reader. Use pie structure to keep your quotes to a minimum to increase original thought. Avoid cherry picking your thoughts because then you end up with half-truths. A half-truth contains part of, but not the whole truth. Focus on the issue, not the person. So avoid attacking the person. Avoid all or nothing, false dilemma, fallacies. So when I say focus on the issue, so let's say you want to choose which presidential candidate I'm going to choose. And so if the presidential candidate says so-and-so is going to be a lousy so-and-so because she's dirty, she's corrupt, we don't listen to that because that's just someone's opinion. Instead, we want to listen to the issues. We want to figure out what does that candidate stand for? What does that candidate believe in? Is he for or against that issue? And if we can agree on the policies that candidate stands for, that's why we would elect that candidate. So based on not the person, but on the issue. For when we attack the person, that's considered the ad hominem fallacy. So different kinds of evidence that's credible that you can use in your paper. Observations. As scientists or doctors use observations to make a diagnosis. Statistics. Using statistics or percentages to back up a claim or thesis. Tests and experiments, tests to prove a hypothesis. Clinical trials to prove a vaccine is safe. Analogies, making valid comparison, cause and effect between several aspects of a topic. Expert testimony, basing your facts on experts. Examples, using case studies or other examples to prove your case. Analysis, finding patterns of behavior to make connections to back up your claim. Doing research on a topic to learn more about the topic. So how do we gather credible evidence? We use kapow. You got to make sure C, it is current. A, authoritative with experts. P, point of view is objective and not a ad. O, it has an objective professional tone. W, it has the writing style is professional and has no grammar mistakes. So we use kapow to make sure that something is credible. And what is the importance of credible evidence? Well, if we don't have credible evidence, our paper turns into a fallacy. In other words, fallacy equals nonsense. How do we avoid misusing evidence? We use pie structure. We make sure that our pie structure, that we don't overwhelm the reader with too many examples. Claims without credible evidence become non-credible sources. So claims without proof or credible evidence become rumor, fallacies, and propaganda. So examples of non-credible proof is, hey, did you know Linda is dating the math teacher who's married to somebody else? So any kind of rumor, fallacy, or propaganda is something we don't believe in. Okay, so what evidence do you have to back this up? And so if you make a claim with no evidence, then it becomes a non-credible source. Another example of a non-credible source, humans are all descended from Martian aliens who live inside the planet of Mars. And people are going to think you're nuts when you make claims that don't have credible evidence. So we don't want to have non-credible sources. All Asians are infected with COVID-19 because they have slanty eyes, and also because COVID-19 came from China. That's a non-credible source. Not all Asian people, just like not all Asian people are good at math, and not all Asian people are infected with COVID-19. And so when we believe rumors, fallacies, and propaganda, then we start believing in stereotypes. And so an example of propaganda is President Xi of China is God on earth, and everyone must worship him as God or go to jail. Actually, also Mao Zedong believed that as well, more so than President Xi. The former president, President Mao Zedong, actually believed that as well. And if you did not believe in the divinity of Mao Zedong, you would go to jail. So non-credible sources can also include, or fake news, that's a slang way of saying it, propaganda, in which governments make you believe false lies about themselves for which they do not have. They make claims with no credible evidence. And so when we write our papers, we always back it up with credible evidence to avoid fallacies and to avoid rumor, fallacies, and propaganda. Fallacies of relevance occur when the conclusion of the premise is false, or when you present a claim with false or no evidence. Examples include most TV ads, such as 9 out of 10 dentists recommend Dentyne. So this is the example I gave earlier. Which dentists? Who are these dentists? Where is the evidence for this claim? What other TV ads do you know that present false claims like this? So most TV ads, or one could say almost all TV ads, are all examples of fallacies of relevance because they make claims with no credible evidence. In other words, they're missing ethos. the appeal to credibility, which is having experts. Fallacies of ambiguity. A fallacy of ambiguity where the ambiguity in question arises directly from the poor grammatical structure in a sentence. A fallacy of ambiguity occurs when a bad argument relies on the grammatical ambiguity to sound strong and logical. Examples of fallacies of ambiguity. The bark was painful. Do you mean the tree's bark was rough, or a dog's bark communicated pain or hurt to the listener's ears? And there have been lawsuits based on fallacies of ambiguity where using a comma or not using a comma changed the words of a contract. And therefore, disagreement arose on how that statement should be interpreted with or without a comma. So that's also known as a fallacy of ambiguity. That is why we have to make sure when we write our papers, we properly punctuate and have good grammar so that we avoid having fallacies of ambiguity. Fallacies of overgeneralization. The hasty generalization fallacy is sometimes called the overgeneralization fallacy. It is basically making a claim based on evidence that is just too small. Essentially, you can't make a claim and say that something is true if you have only one example or two. So example of fallacy of overgeneralization. Kevin's grandparents do not know how to use a computer. Kevin thinks all older people must be computer literate because his grandparents don't know how to use a computer. Well, just because his grandparents don't know how to use a computer, that doesn't mean that all the other old people in the world don't know how to use a computer. So when you have a hasty generalization fallacy, just like the all Chinese people are good at math, it leads to stereotypes, which leads to racism. And so a lot of racism occurs out of ignorance because people make fallacies of overgeneralization about different groups they don't know about. Cherry-picking fallacy. A cherry-picking fallacy occurs when you present only one side of an argument, which results in bias. To have a balanced argument, you need to present both sides of an argument in order for the argument to be balanced and fair. So for instance, media bias. So example, Fox News presents only how President Biden makes mistakes, but never presents President Biden's accomplishments. MSNBC and CNN do the opposite. They only present President Biden's accomplishments, but not his mistakes. So that's known as cherry picking. In other words, you just show one side of an issue. And it's also known as media bias. So what is a fallacy? What is a fallacy of relevance? A fallacy of ambiguity? A fallacy of overgeneralization? And so whenever someone makes a claim with no credible evidence, then we have a fallacy. So we want to avoid having fallacies in our papers by using credible evidence. Engaging the opposition. So this means that in order to have a fair and balanced essay, we need to write about what the other side has to say, and then we rebut what the other side has to say to strengthen our argument. So when we rebut the other side, this makes our argument fair and balanced, and we avoid having a cherry-picking fallacy, which we just write about one side, and we just have a one-sided argument, which makes us look biased. So how do we engage the other side? So we've got the Toulmin argumentative method of engaging the other side. In the Toulmin method, both sides clash and conflict, kind of like when you watch those presidential debates where you have President candidate Hillary Clinton, and then she talks about her side of the issue, and then President, candidate Trump rebuts her and says, no, we're going to do it this way. So that is a Toulmin argumentation where each side presents their point of view, but then the other side rebuts that point of view. Also, when you see it in trials where you have the prosecutor saying so-and-so is guilty, 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 and then you have the defense saying, no, so-and-so is innocent, innocent, innocent. So that's just a classic Toulmin argumentation is the classic way in which we present arguments in English, in which we present both sides of the case to the jury, and then we let the jury decide whether or not that person is guilty or innocent. So in the Toulmin style of engaging the other side, so how do we put this kind of Toulmin thing into our essay? So what you can do, there are two ways to do it. First, you can put the other side into your introduction paragraph, in which you write 5 sentences about the other side and you rebut it with your thesis statement. This is known as a turnabout introduction paragraph. For example, if I were to say, if my thesis statement is smoking is dangerous, so the other side would be smoking is glamorous, right? So I would put in my turnabout introduction paragraph, I would write, many people think that smoking is glamorous. Teenagers see celebrities and athletes light up. In old, early 20th century movies, you can see the actors light up a cigarette and they look sophisticated, mature, and they look glamorous. And also when vaping has so many delicious flavors like chocolate and strawberry, so many teenagers and people think smoking is glamorous and is not bad for your health. Okay, so that's the other side. Then you rebut it with your thesis statement. However, or in reality, smoking is bad for a person's health because smoking causes lung cancer, stomach cancer, and throat cancer. That becomes your thesis statement where you rebut the other side. So that's one easy way in which you can engage the other side in a Toulmin argumentation style where you clash. Another way of doing it is you can write an entire paragraph, instead of writing a 5-paragraph essay. So after your 4th reason, your 4th paragraph, in the 5th paragraph, you could write in a much longer, more involved. Some people think that smoking is glamorous. For instance, in the movie such and such, Betty Davis lights up to Clark Gable's character and smokes throughout the entire movie. And she looks so glamorous and pretty. In other words, you write a much longer than the intro that I had, than the turnabout intro method. Then you would write one whole paragraph about the other side, about smoking being glamorous, and that's called the counter argument paragraph. Then you write a rebuttal paragraph. It would be, however, smoking is really bad for a person's health because, and then you write a whole bunch of 7 to 8 sentences of why you think smoking is bad. So that way you're going to have a 7-paragraph essay structure, and that's known as a Toulmin essay using the 5-paragraph essay structure, which I don't think I cover in this class. I am covering a little more than what you are required to write in your persuasive essay. But if you're up to the challenge, you can add in to the engaging the other side Toulmin method in order to make your argument stronger and to avoid cherry picking fallacy. So that's called the Toulmin way of doing it, where everybody clashes. The Rogerian way, in the Rogerian style of argumentation, you concede to the other side. You would say something like, oh, I agree, you're right about such and such and such and such. But however, I think such and such and such and such. Okay, so you have some commonality, some common ground with the other side, and then you switch over to your side. And so using the Rogerian method is very, very, is used when you are doing very delicate, like diplomacy. Let's say you're doing some diplomacy with Iraq or Iran. So you want to find some common ground, and then you put in what your needs are. So you would say, we both believe in peace in the world. We both believe that we don't want a war, and we want to avoid any kind of conflict, and we both want our countries to have a successful economy. So that would be the common ground, okay? And then you would say, however, in order to achieve those goals, you need to do this my way. You need to not have, this would be for, I think it's Iraq. Anyway, you need to not have nuclear weapons. You need to tone down your military apparatus. You need to not wage war on your neighboring countries. You need to have a successful economy by trading with your neighbors instead of invading and destroying your neighbors, that sort of thing. So in a Rogerian argument, you concede to the other side a little bit, then you go your way. And so the Rogerian style of argumentation is used, it used to be given when the loser of, and another way in which Rogerian argumentation used to be used, wow, I can't believe it's sounding dated, is when the politician concedes. In other words, you have an election, and in an election, you always have a winner and a loser. And in the old days, the loser of an election would graciously concede to the other side and say, okay, you're the winner and I concede. So that's also, and then when they make their concession speech, they would say something like, you should go with the winner, and all of my supporters should all go over to the other side because, and then you concede your place to the other side. So that's also in the old days when politicians used to concede, that was known as also a Rogerian, the concession speech itself. So if you look at John McCain concession speech to Obama, that is a classic Rogerian in which he gives up his position and concedes to Obama as the winner of that, so you can always YouTube that. I used to give that as an example of classic Rogerian argumentation. So basically, a Rogerian argumentation is very similar and overlaps with common ground argumentation. So a common ground argumentation is when both sides find common ground to solve a problem. Common ground argumentation is used in diplomacy when two countries find common ground to write a treaty or have a ceasefire. Two sides make compromises that both sides can live with based on this common ground. Common ground argumentation sounds a lot like Rogerian because you have to concede to the other side before you make your claim. The difference is that in common ground argumentation, both sides concede to the other side, while in the Rogerian, only the writer concedes to the other side. But it's not really that important to understand the differences between common ground and Rogerian, okay? Basically, all you have to remember is when you do Rogerian, you want to find common ground with the other side before you state your point of view. Whereas in Toulmin, you state the other side, then you state your point of view. That's all you have to remember. If you want some examples, you should look at Obama. In Obama's 2004 speeches, he gives a lot of Rogerian speeches. He would say something like, just like Republicans, we Democrats agree that America should have a successful economy, and America should be #1 in the world, for instance. So he concedes to the other side. However, we Democrats believe in blah, 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 blah. So when in the very beginning, young Obama, who was very idealistic, made a lot of Rogerian speeches. Then we fast forward to 2012, okay? He just goes straight on Toulmin, okay? He'll say, Republicans act like this, blah, 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 all the bad stuff, but we Democrats are the good guys. They're the bad guys. And so he became much more Toulmin as he got older, basically. So here you see a character change from Rogerian to Toulmin, where you clash. So you have two different ways of argumentation, of engaging the other side. You can either use the Rogerian to the other side, common ground method, or you can clash. Those are just simply two ways in which it doesn't matter about the politics of Obama. Basically, I just use them as an example of you can use either one of these styles to frame your argumentative essay. And so both Rogerian and common ground argumentations are so similar that people use them together, okay? And in both cases, because in Rogerian, you get to concede to the other side. So this is an effective way of arguing is if you have a teenager at home and she's not obeying you and she's not doing what you say. And so a lot of my students who are parents say that when they use the Rogerian method and they actually concede, well, you know, Jennifer, I can see that you've gotten much more mature and you know how to do this, 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 and this. And I trust that you can do that, 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 and that. And at that stage, you stop. And then the teenager becomes totally hooked to what you're going to say because she feels special. She feels adult because she feels she's being listened to and taken seriously. So that's one of the assets, advantages of Rogerian is you do make the other side feel good. And when people feel good, they're more likely to listen to you. So that's one way of diplomacy. That's why it's used a lot in diplomacy. You want to make the other side feel good. So then the parents would tell me, wow, Professor H, after I learned about Rogerian in your class, I used it on my teenager and whoa, now she actually listens. She actually obeys me. That's amazing. They're so amazed, okay, that this works. Well, if it works in intense countries that politicians have used throughout the 20th century and before that, it will work obviously on somebody's disobedient teenager. How do we make concessions to the other side? So we make concessions to the other side by admitting certain aspects of the topic on the other side is correct. Think of an argument as a lively debate. Anticipate the reader's questions, concerns, and objections, and counter arguments about your topic. By making concessions, you recognize points scored by the other side. You strengthen your argument by being able to later rebut the other side. When you concede, you make the other side feel good, so they're more likely to listen to you when you rebut their side, when you rebut to your side, making your argument much more credible. Words that indicate concession. Admittedly, Jan, I realize you are getting more mature, and so I think I should give you the privilege of a later curfew. It is true that you are growing up. You're not a baby anymore, Jan, so I think that you can handle the maturity of staying out until much later time. Of course, granted, you are right. I concede that you are growing more mature. I agree that, no doubt, perhaps, certainly it's the case that you are getting much older and mature, and I am so proud that I can trust that you're not going to get into trouble and you're going to come home at the right and regular time, etc., etc. You get the idea, right? You concede to the teenager's need for validation, and it makes the teenager feel good. So you make the other side feel good before you make your claim or your needs known. Granted, smoking may look glamorous. However, smoking is dangerous to your health. So here you have some examples of what that sounds like when you concede to the other side. Admittedly, smoking may look glamorous, mature. However, smoking is actually dangerous to your health. I concede that you are much more mature than I imagine. So therefore, I am allowing you to stay out later at night with your boyfriend, because I know you're not going to do anything that I would not do. Okay, I agree that vaping has many delicious flavors. However, vaping is dangerous to your health due to its potential for nicotine addiction. So you can use this Rogerian style in your introduction paragraph, where you state the other side at the beginning of your paragraph, then state your side in your thesis statement. So this is called a turnabout introduction paragraph. So even when you concede a point, you can answer the objection by rebutting it. A good rebuttal is a small, tactful argument aimed at a weak spot in the opposing argument. So point out the counter-argument limits, tell the other side of the story, and address logical fallacies in the other argument. So other ways of saying it, you would say, some people say that. Opponents say that smoking is glamorous. Many people claim that smoking is glamorous. Those who disagree believe that smoking is glamorous. Or many believe that abortion is moral if a mother's life is in danger, or if the mother is carrying the child of somebody they don't like. However, I believe abortion is immoral because abortion is a sin against God, since each baby, each fetus, each new life is a gift from heaven and from God. So that's how you can concede to the other side and then state what you believe. So here's some examples of early Obama speeches. So as I mentioned before, Obama would say, I agree with the Republicans that as Americans, we all want a united country. We all want liberty and independence, equality for all. But I want more because. Then Obama starts his rebuttal to rebut how he intends to unite the country versus the Republican view. Interestingly, early Obama speeches were Rogerian speeches, but later Obama speeches were more Toulmin in nature. A counter-argument. So I already gave you an example of how to do a turnabout paragraph. Now, if you want to write a rebuttal paragraph, this is how a rebuttal paragraph that would be like the 5th paragraph after your 3 reasons, after you state your 3 reasons. And so here you would say in your counter-argument paragraph, some people say using lectures in class is boring and monotonous. Having only the teacher speak for hours on end and not have any student activity is not really interesting for students and lowers student attention and learning. Teachers' lectures are seen as an outmoded, teacher-centered form of education. Many teachers see lectures as not an interesting way to motivate student learning. Instead, they prefer a student-centered classroom where students are active and lectures are eliminated from the curriculum. So all of this is the other side, saying that lectures are considered boring, okay? I disagree with the claim. And so this is your rebuttal. So the other side thinks lectures are so boring, but I think lectures are not outmoded or boring. I think that lectures can be made to be dynamic. So I disagree with the claim that lectures are outmoded and boring. On the contrary, according to the book, Dynamic Lectures, teaching by lecture is a vital part of your teaching handbook because lectures provide foundational knowledge for students on an unfamiliar topic. Students gain mastery of the topic faster when a teacher lectures. And also, lectures provide a faster way for teachers to teach the content of the class. After all, there are many ways to give a dynamic lecture through humor, multimedia, and having a fun personality. So that's an example of a rebuttal paragraph. So when do we use Toulmin or Rogerian in our writing? We can use Toulmin or Rogerian in all kinds of essays, in our classification, description, example, narrative, not just for persuasive and argumentative essays, although they are most commonly used in persuasive essays. For instance, you can put in a turnabout introduction paragraph into a comparison contrast essay, classification essay. You can place your counter argument and rebuttal paragraphs after your fourth paragraph in any kind of essay in order to prove that your point is right. If we know how to engage the other side, this makes our paper seem more credible, fair, and balanced. When our papers are credible, fair, and balanced, we avoid fallacies and bias. If in doubt, always show two sides of the issue, then rebut the other side to convince the reader of your point of view. Always make sure your argument has ethos, pathos, and logos to avoid fallacies. So why do we engage the opposition? So that we avoid the cherry-picking fallacy, so that our paper appears fair and balanced. We use concessions so that we validate the other side and make the other side more apt to listen to our point of view, such as the disobedient teenager. We can write a rebuttal and a counter argument paragraph in our paper, or we can write a turnabout introduction paragraph. So those are two ways in which you can interject engaging the other side into your essay. And the main difference between a Toulmin and a Rogerian is a Toulmin is in which you just simply state the other side, then you state your claim. In other words, you find the weaknesses of the other side's argument, and then you state your opinion. Whereas in a Rogerian, you actually concede to the other side, find common ground, and then you state your opinion. And so make sure that when you write your essay, you have ethos, credibility, pathos, emotion, logos, logic. If you have all three of these appeals, you have a valid argumentation without fallacies. So in order for your argument to be credible and to avoid fallacies, that is illogical argumentation, you need to have all three appeals, ethos, pathos, and logos. If only one of these appeals are missing, then your argument becomes illogical or fallacious. It was Aristotle himself who came up with these three appeals. So make sure you have ethos, the appeal to credibility, pathos, appeal to emotion, and logos, appeal to logic. So ethos is ethics, establishing personal credentials and getting your audience to trust you. Pathos, pity, inspiring an emotional response and getting your audience to feel your topic. Logic, appeal to logic, arguing based on reasons and facts and getting your audience to think. So ethos builds credibility. Be thoroughly honest. Make realistic claims, projections, and promises. Develop and maintain trust. Logos, make logical appeals. Engage readers positively. Use a fitting tone. Aim to motivate, not manipulate readers. Don't trash talk the opposition. Have a thesis with matching body paragraphs. Pathos, appeal to emotion. Focus on your readers' needs. Picture your readers as resistant to your ideas and use appeals that match the needs of your readers. Always be aware of your audience. So here are some examples of how ethos, pathos, and logos are used in argumentation in your everyday life. And so ethos talks about character. In other words, trustworthiness, educated, reliable, credible, honest, fair. So that was Martin Luther King. So when we listen to somebody, we want to listen to someone who is trustworthy, educated, reliable, credible, honest, and fair. And appeal to pathos or emotion is someone that is, let's go back. Sorry about that. So appeal to emotion is someone in which you appeal to someone's love, pity, justice, and all the other emotions. So whenever you, and the reason why they have a dog is whenever they do those commercials for animal shelter and they want you to give money to the animal shelter, they always give you these pictures of these cute dogs or dogs who are being tortured or something, and your money will rescue those dogs. So they are appealing to your emotion. Reason, appeal to logic. So here you would use case studies, cause and effect, analogies, and credible evidence to appeal to logic, and have a thesis statement with matching body paragraphs. So we use persuasive appeals to make the world better by appealing to values and social obligations. So this is why we use pathos, okay, to appeal to someone's better nature. We appeal to someone's, so if I, an English teacher, were to tell you what it's like to work as a nurse without ever having any nursing experience, would you believe me? So that's ethos. If an article did not have a logical structure that had lots of grammar errors, would you believe the article? That's logos. If someone uses fear or fear-mongering to try to persuade you of a topic, would you believe that topic? That is, if you just use pathos. This is why a persuasive argument, to be persuasive, you need to have ethos, expert testimony, pathos, excellent descriptive language, and logos, good essay structure. So this whole section on ethos, pathos, logos with 3 persuasive appeals. All 3 are necessary in order for you to have a valid argument and to avoid fallacies. The 3 kinds of persuasive essays. So the first kind of persuasive essay is the position paper. So a position paper is when you take a stand on an issue. And you write a position paper that clearly states what side you are on and clearly states what you believe in. Most position papers aim to educate and inform the reader and persuade the reader to their side of an issue. The topics addressed in position papers are debatable topics. Your argument must be informative, logical, and engaging. So are you for or against the topic? Is the topic moral or immoral? So you have to make a choice and make a stand. So examples of position paper topics. In the Chippewa Indian tribe, women are the stronger gender, and they are the leaders of the tribe because they are a matriarchal kind of society. Nuclear power is not the answer for our energy needs because the risks outweigh the benefits. Climate change is not a hoax because we can see that the planet is warming up several degrees every year, and we could see the Arctic caps and Antarctica melting. Gun control is unnecessary because you can properly train people how to use a gun. So make your topic debatable, something that the reader can agree or disagree. So these are some examples of how you can take a position for or against your topic. More examples of position papers in the real world. When a political candidate runs for president, he writes position papers on what he believes. So if you go to the official website of that presidential candidate, you see the position papers of how that candidate is going to handle immigration or healthcare or foreign policy. All right. And so when we vote for president, we vote for the issues, not the person. So when you read their official website, you can see their official position on many social issues. So for instance, on President Biden's position paper, this is the Biden-Harris administration immediate priorities. This was printed right after President Biden was elected. So President Biden wrote, I think this was January that he was inaugurated. President Biden will deliver bold action and immediate relief for American families as the country grapples with COVID-19. This will include actions to control the COVID-19 pandemic, provide economic relief, tackle climate change, and advance racial equity and civil rights, as well as immediate actions to reform our immigration system and restore America's standing in the world. So this was Biden 2020. So this is an example of a position paper. Here you have President Trump, his position paper. Over the past 4 years, my administration delivered for Americans of all backgrounds like never before. Save America is about building on those accomplishments, supporting the brave conservatives who will define the future of the America First movement, the future of our party, and the future of our beloved country. Save America is also about ensuring that we keep America first in our foreign and domestic policy. We take pride in our country. We teach the truth about our history. We celebrate our rich heritage and national traditions. And of course, we respect our great American flag. So that's Trump 2022. So when you take a position, that is known as a position persuasive essay. And so those are some examples of position papers where you take a position on many different issues. And so the first kind of persuasive paper is a take a stand, or take a position persuasive paper. And for this class, you will be writing the take a position persuasive essay for your class. The second kind of persuasive essay is the call to action persuasive paper, where you convince the reader your point of view, and then you convince the reader to take action, such as write a law, write to your senator, go to a protest, that sort of thing. So after you convince, a call to action, after you convince the reader of your point of view, that your point of view is the best one, you can persuade the reader to act. Call to action persuasive writing occurs in newsletters, editorials, marketing, business proposals, academic journals, white papers, that's the presidential papers I just read, and traditional essays. Writers call for action because they believe change is necessary to fix a problem or correct an injustice. The writer's goal is to get the reader to care so much about this topic that they will act on it to fix the issue. In academics, call to action issues would be to expand the art department, create a mentoring program, or a political or social issue, shelter for abused women, or help people in a crisis, such as a hurricane, epidemic, or war. A good call to action argument has a compelling argument where the writer accurately describes the issue and convinces the reader of its importance. It has a logical argument. The argument is based on reliable evidence, such as expert testimony, tests, and experiments. And it has a mature voice. The writing sounds informed and genuine. It includes no manipulative appeals, quarrelsome language, or demeaning accusations. So to me, the most famous example of a call to action persuasive essay is the I Have a Dream speech by Martin Luther King Jr. So here is Martin Luther King speaking. I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our country. 50 years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon, light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negroes is still not free. 100 years later, the light of the Negro, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, he's very good. That is, Martin Luther King was very good with the repetition in order to drive home his point that from 1865 to 1965, when this took place, that's 100 years later, the Negroes are still enslaved. You got to remember that Martin Luther King was a preacher, so he was able to use biblical examples, like when the Jews were in Exodus, and so he would draw up the similarity between this being enslaved and wanting to be liberated from slavery. We have also come to this hallowed spot to remind America the fierce urgency of action now. This is no time to engage in the luxury of cooling off or taking the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. Now is the time to make real promises of democracy. Now is the time to rise from the dark and desolate valley of segregation to the sunlit path of racial justice. Now is the time to lift our nation from the quicksands of racial injustice to the solid rock of brotherhood. Now is the time to make justice a reality for all of God's children. It would be fatal for the nation to overlook the urgency of this moment. This sweltering summer of the Negro's legitimate discontent will not pass until there is an invigorating autumn of freedom and equality. 1963, okay, I was wrong about the years, 1963, not 1965, is not an end, but a beginning. And those who hope that the Negro needed to blow off steam and will now be content will have a rude awakening if the nation returns to business as usual. And there will be neither rest nor tranquility in America until the Negro is granted his citizenship rights. The whirlwinds of revolt will continue to shake the foundations of our nation until the bright day of justice emerges. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up to the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And so that made Martin Luther King so persuasive. He had ethos because he was a PhD. He himself had experienced discrimination himself. So that makes ethos. Pathos, he would repeat 100 years later. So he was very good in using metaphors and alliteration in his descriptive language. Pathos, logos, his one main message: we need to act now in order to end the injustice of racism. So he had one main theme idea throughout his entire speech. And so that means he had logos. Ethos, pathos, logos equals valid call to action persuasive essay. The last kind of persuasive essay is the problem solution example paper. In a problem solution persuasive essay, first you write down what the problem is. Then you propose a solution to the problem. So when you write a problem solution paper, you are creating a proposal. And proposals are prescriptions for change. As such, they challenge the reader not just to care about a problem, but also to act upon a problem, just as a call to action problem, but just like the call. So the call to action and the problem solution paper are very, very similar, okay? Because in it, they overlap. The call to action, because you can also say that Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech is also a problem solution proposal. He proposes the problem of racism. And the solution is everybody getting together in brotherhood and working together in equality in order to solve racism. So in his call to action speech, yes, it is a proposal. It is a prescription for change, and it's also a problem solution paper, so that you can meld the two things together. Just like you can meld Rogerian and common ground together, you can meld problem solution and call to action together into one persuasive paper. Because, proposal writers argue for remedies in all areas of life, from academia to social justice issues. So that's what Martin Luther King was trying to do. He was trying to argue for a remedy for racism. So in our life, you may write proposals to justify expenditures, sell products, or troubleshoot problems. In each situation, you clearly define the problem, you offer a solution, and explain how to implement it. What are problem solution essays? Problem solution essays consider the problems of a particular situation and give solutions to those problems. They are in some ways very similar to cause and effect essays, especially in terms of structure. Problem solution essays are actually a subtype of another type of essay, which has the following four components. So first, you talk about the situation, you give context to the problem, then you offer your solution and your evaluation of that solution. So the first two elements here, you're talking about what the problem is. And then the second two elements, you're providing your solution to that problem. So if we're going to go back to Martin Luther King, the situation is that the Negro is sweltering in the heat of oppression. The problem is that racism oppresses the Negro, and there needs to be a solution, which is an end to racism and equality, in which he sees someday a country where his four little children will be based on the content of their heart and not their character. That would be the solution. So problem solution essays can be call to action essays where you want the reader call to action. So here is an example of a situation here. So here's a situation which everyone's eating too much junk food and getting fat from the junk food. And if you eat a lot of junk food, and if you eat a lot of sugars, carbohydrates, and you don't exercise, you're going to get fat. And that fatness is going to lead to a heart disease and all kinds of bad stuff for your body. Okay, so that's the situation. Eating bad and no exercise causes bad health. That's the situation. So that's the problem. Obesity and poor fitness decrease life expectancy. Overweight people are more likely to have serious illnesses such as diabetes, heart disease, which can result in premature death. It is well known that regular exercise can reduce the risk of heart disease and stroke. Solution. Changes by individuals to their diet and their physical activity can increase life expectancy. There is reliance today on so if you eat healthy foods, if you have salads or vegetables and fruits, and you go and work out every day, you have exercise and eat healthy foods, that's the solution. You're not going to get fat. So I presented a problem in which too many people are fat. Solution, exercise and eat healthy. So that is a problem solution paper. And I think that so illustrative essays and example essays can also be used as a problem solution paper in which you present the problem in the introduction, and then you have your three solutions as your body paragraphs. So yes, so problem solution papers are very, very common essay structure. Another one, here you have governments could also implement, so not only can a person, in their personal life, exercise and diet, also the government could implement initiatives to improve people's eating and exercise habits. You can have TV ads to tell people and inform people how they can lead a more healthy life, eat healthy foods, and education by adding classes, exercise classes to the curriculum about healthy diet and lifestyles. And so governments could also do more to encourage their citizens to walk or cycle instead of taking the car. And in architecture, when you build a city, you would build more bicycle lanes, you build more places where pedestrians could just walk without worrying about being run over by a car. Most European cities do have pedestrian sections where you could just walk around without worrying about being run over by a car. So this increases people to walk and stay healthy. And also in Europe, they have more bicycle, where you can rent a bicycle and ride around instead of those electric bicycles. And I mean the kind of bicycles you actually have to pump the cycle, okay, not the electric kind. So if the more you exercise, the better you are healthy. And so here are some ways in which you can present a problem solution. First, you present the problem, then you present the solution. Or you could present the problem, then the solution, then the problem, then the solution. So if I were to say, I have three different problems, such as obesity, okay, then the solution would be exercise. Or heart attacks, okay, eat healthy. So you can either do it either as problem, solution, or you can have problem 1, problem 2, problem 3, then solution 1, solution 2, solution 3. So this is just like the comparison contrast essay where you talk about first New York and then Los Angeles, or New York, Los Angeles, New York, Los Angeles. Anyway, so you can either use the block method or the chain or alternate method to present your problem solution essay. So a good problem solution proposal paper has an accurate description where the writer accurately describes the problem, including relevant details regarding history, causes, effects, dangers, costs, and impact on the readers. The writing also includes solutions such as history, side effects, costs, successes, and failures. You also have to have a thorough analysis where the writer carefully analyzes the problem and each solution and why the recommended solution is the best choice. And then the writer supports all of the claims with credible evidence and rational argumentation. So what are the 3 types of persuasive papers? You have the take a position paper, you have the call to action paper, and then you have the problem solution paper. So you can write any of these, even in class. You have a choice of writing either a position paper, a call to action paper, or a problem solution paper. In conclusion, having the skill to persuade people allows you to be successful at work, in your personal life, and to help society. If you can make a valid argument with no fallacies and with ethos, credibility, pathos, care, and logos, competency, then you can get your way and be persuasive. These were the references that I used for this particular presentation. And this is the way in which you can use your APA at the end of your paper, in which it's an alphabetical order, B, K, L, T, V. And I use the author's name, then I use the date, then I use the article name, and then I use the official website. So this is how we write a reference citation. And so I'm finally done, and I'm finally done with this lecture. And I hope you enjoyed my lecture on persuasive essays and how to write a persuasive essay. Because out of all of the essay forms, the persuasive essay is the most common way for you to write in your college papers. So if you have any questions at all, you can always email me or call me. So I hope to see you and in the Zoom or on the phone. So email me if you have any questions at all. So have a great week, everyone.